Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mamet.
Hello, WABC listeners and YouTube viewers. Today's guest is quite famous. We're glad to have him here.
What's up, guys?
So today's guest is Ken Genalo, Director of the New York Office for ICE, Immigration, Customs Enforcement. Welcome again.
Well, it's great to be back on, Kevin and Ed. It's good to see you guys. And yeah, it has been a little bit busy lately.
So since we had you on the show a couple months ago, a lot of things have changed.
Correct. Right? I mean, I'm still trying to educate the public on the dangers of the sanctuary city policies, working with whoever I can. And, you know, the mayor's office had some meetings with some of his deputy mayors and also with the governor's office, some of her staffers, you know, to try and show them the dangers. And obviously, you see the mayor and you see the chief of patrol, they're all buying in, realizing that they need to cooperate with ICE ERO. The governor's office, just recently, we did see something that she said she would cooperate with ICE, but it still comes down to the city council. The city council owns those sanctuary policies. So individuals that are harmed because of the policies basically lies on the city council's you know, their jurisdiction, because they're the ones that have codified that with the former mayor, with Mr. de Blasio at the time. So, look, I keep trying to show them the dangers of these policies. And obviously last week I went out, I had the interview with the New York Post, and I explained to them at the time that, you know, I stated that it would take a lifetime. And, you know, you have people from both sides. Well, what are you doing now? And why are you waiting? And I was telling the people that's why you need to be educated, is that it's not out there what we do. And basically, my staff has been out. We're out every day. And on the PIX show I did over the weekend, I broke down the numbers of what my staff is doing. So basically, last fiscal year, the men and women of ERO New York City, we arrested close to 1,000 individuals, non-citizens, in the New York City AOR. And remember, I cover all of the 5 boroughs of New York City. I cover the 2 counties in Long Island, and I cover the 7 lower counties in the Hudson Valley region. So we're making these arrests. But now when I say it might take a lifetime, is that the city still does not cooperate with us. So even though we're out making all these arrests, before Mr. de Blasio had put the new sanctuary policies in place, we had a unit that worked out of Rikers Island, and we worked hand in hand with the NYC DOC. And when the individuals were done with their hearing or their cases, whether they're being released from doing time or they're being released on bail or ROR, whatever, we would be able to vet them if they were foreign born to determine if we had probable cause to place them in removal proceedings. We used to, at that time, arrest close to, 100 a month that were being released from Rikers. So if you kick the unit out of Rikers, that's 100 criminals a month, foreign-born criminals that are being released back into the community. So you figure about 1,000 to 1,200 a year that now are being released back into the community that we would have taken custody of right at Rikers Island. So if we're arresting 1,000 criminals with my office a year, and New York City's releasing 1,000 to 1,200 back into the community, you do the math, you see the challenge that we have. So, you see people saying, well, you need to start. We've always been doing it. We've always been out in the streets. We've always been arresting these individuals. And the fact is that if we had the cooperation of the city, these individuals would be coming right over to us and would be detained for removal proceedings. And everyone has due process in front of a judge. They have the right to counsel. So, at least they would be off the street and the recidivism rate wouldn't be there. But remember, these individuals, they basically prey on the same people, the victims. And a lot of them are the migrant community. And at times it's the most vulnerable, such as, migrant females or migrant children. And I asked myself, and I've been saying it a lot lately, is where is all the women's advocacy groups, and where are the individuals that advocate for the children and the minors? Why does their voices go deaf when it involves sanctuary policies? These people should not be released back out into the street to basically victimize and terrorize the same people. Someone needs to say that, look, we should be cooperating with ICE. These people need to be turned over to ICE, and they shouldn't be placed back into the community where they could do harm again. It doesn't make any sense. You see what's going on now,
right,
with the new administration is coming in, and you see the mayors and governors and politicians in different states and cities saying, oh, they're not going to cooperate. I don't understand how the constituents can actually say, and themselves, they're keeping their community safe when they're releasing all these criminals right back into the community. So, look, it's enough time that we stop playing politics, basically.
Yeah.
The politics is over right now. We need to keep the community safe. And at least in New York, you don't hear the mayor saying that and saying we're not going to cooperate. At least they want to collaborate with us. And we're just hoping that we can reach that final step to get that in process.
right. Cap?
Well, you know, you hit an interesting point. Adams originally welcomed everybody, but I think now he's in such a difficult situation. He's looking for an escape, and he's looking to you guys to help him out. But getting back to the sanctuary laws, I've been hearing a lot about federal law is supreme over everything else. So if that's true, can't you get around the New York City local law by using federal law?
Well, I mean, this is something that also drives me a little nuts, and I'm not the legal person, so I do speak with my legal team, my Office of Principal Legal Advisory, and I asked him the same thing. I said, how does the state law trump a federal law? Isn't that in violation of the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution of the United States? And basically, it's the semantics they play where they did it a lot in the prior the first Trump administration, where they said, we'll cooperate with you if you have a judicial warrant. Once you have a judicial warrant, we'll turn the individuals over to you. Well, in administrative hearings for immigration purposes, there are no judicial warrants, but all of our detainers are accompanied by an administrative warrant that's issued by a manager or above. This authorization comes directly from Congress, from 8 CFR 287, that basically states the authorization to issue these warrants lies with ICE and the managers of ICE. We do hundreds of them a day. So the semantics of the states and the cities saying just get a judicial warrant, they know it doesn't exist in these cases. You can't issue a judicial warrant for an administrative case. And, you know, that's one of the reasons that they try to show that they would cooperate, but they know it's falling in an area where it will never be come to fruition, because we do not issue judicial warrants on administrative cases. Now, on our criminal cases, yes, we do. And they would cooperate there. But the majority of individuals that are in the country illegally that are committing these crimes will be arrested administratively by my unit.
I would think that the courts might have to get involved in this and determine whether or not the U.S. Supremacy Clause takes over.
I'm all for it. Trust me. Anything that would have them take a look at that to at least show that they should be cooperating with us, I'm all for it. And even what we've talked about, and I've worked with the Common Sense Caucus with Councilman Holden and Councilman Borelli, it's bipartisan. And you're starting to see other bipartisan representatives in the city come forward saying, look, we should be cooperating with ICRO. We don't have to change the whole sanctuary policy. How about we amend it and just make it where NYPD and NYC DOC cooperate with ICRO on these bad actors? You don't have to, you could still control who you turn over to us, but how about you start turning these individuals over to us that are committing some heinous crimes in the community?
So the NYPD cooperation with ICE is the same from last time you were
Correct. Unfortunately, there is no cooperation. And look, a law enforcement agency wants to cooperate with another law enforcement agency, but the city council is the one that does the rules. And I've been saying this till I'm blue in my face, is that, NYPD and ICRO, we should be standing arm in arm out in the street, tackling this issue. We have the same overarching priorities, and that is to keep the community safe. I mean, every time I think of it, I still can't believe it, is that how do you think you're keeping your community safe by releasing criminals back into it? And then how do you tell a law enforcement agency not to cooperate with another law enforcement agency? And I go back to the 9/11 scenario, and I was there deployed when I was on SRT at the time when we were INS. And the 9/11 Commission even stated it. The main reason for the 9/11 event was because of the lack of cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement. How do we go right back to that in an area where we're located, where ground zero occurred? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense, and it's all politics. And we need to make sure that we start putting the communities before politics. I mean, we can all agree that these individuals that are committing these heinous crimes should not be at large in our communities.
And then you get people like Cuomo, who refers to you as thugs and said he's going to sue you if you take action. I mean, how do you deal with that?
Look, I mean, me personally, I've been called a lot worse, but you did see some of that narrative being pushed and the name calling being pushed. And that doesn't help.
Right.
I mean, how does that help?
Yeah. So your relationship with Cuomo when he was in office versus, say, Hochul today, big difference or same?
That's basically the same.
Basically the same.
Yeah, it's just an extension of the Cuomo administration right now. Right. So, and remember, people don't realize that the city has its sanctuary policies, and the state, when Governor Cuomo was in the office, they passed two laws. One was called the Protect Our Court Act, which is abbreviated by POCA, P-O-C-A, and the Green Light Law. And those have ramifications throughout the whole state of New York and the country. And I'll explain to you. The Protect Our Court Act basically stated that if an individual is going to court that day, whether they're leaving their house, they're at the courtroom, leaving the courtroom, or going back to their house, the law prohibits any administrative arrest to ensure that the judicial process is kept. So a lot of times, in law enforcement, people bounce around, their addresses are not viable. We're looking, doing a legwork that we usually do. The staff does their legwork. Well, we might find out the individual's going to court that day. So, all right, we'll let him go to court because we want to see the case go to fruition, and then we can see him come out. But if we see him leaving the court, going home, because of that law, we can't arrest him administratively, because of that Protect Our Court Act, which we have internal policies in ICE that we don't do arrests or execute arrests at the courthouse unless it's exigent circumstances, and that would come to my level to approve. This just took it another step where basically we finally find an avenue to identify and arrest the individual, and we can't because of the POCA Act. Now, the Green Light Law basically stated once they started to give the undocumented individuals driver's licenses, they were afraid that since they were getting driver's licenses, ICE was going to go and arrest them because now they knew who they were. So what they did is they took the access of obtaining DMV records from ICE nationwide. So when you run a query through the databases, each individual law enforcement agency has its own ORI, its originating index. So anything that comes without ORI, they know it's designated as ICE, it will not get a response. So basically, we can't run plates. We don't know who's in the vehicle. If someone's pulling up,
you can't run a plate?
No, we can't run a plate in New York because it'll come back. Our ORI will come back that you're not able to get disseminated the information. So if we're doing a stakeout, we're doing surveillance, or we see the target, someone's pulling up in another vehicle, we don't know if that person has a warrant. We don't know if there's any indicators of violence. We're flying by the seat of our pants at that time. And on top of it, not even in New York, if someone from the ICE office in another state runs it for a New York plate, they won't get the information because it's still an ICE identifier. Wow. And what makes it even worse is the officers for CBP on the border, the northern border, as the vehicles are coming in, can't run the license plates. So, I mean, how does that keep the people safe. And on top of what they did is after they passed that law, they went a step further and stated that if a law enforcement officer disseminates any information from DMV records to ICE, they could be charged with a felony.
Wow.
All right. So you have those two laws on top of the city sanctuary policies. You want to talk about stacking the deck about trying to keep communities safe? This is what we're up against. But in spite of all that, and that's what I tell people, in spite of all that, we're still out every day executing arrests on these heinous individuals that are at large in our communities.
How many arrests would you say per month?
I mean, it depends if you're doing specific surges or operations.
Average.
But I would say we close to 100 a month that we do, depending on the months. You know, some months are heavier than others. And what people, the other thing they say, and you hear now is, oh, they're going to go out, they're going to do raids. We don't do raids. We don't do sweeps. We do targeted enforcement. We know exactly who we're looking for when we're out in the field. So you see now, you're starting to see it on different media channels and news outlets, the people saying that, oh, they're going to come out. Once the criminals are gone, who are they going to arrest? Well, I don't know what planet they're on, but get rid of all those criminals is going to take us at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
But they always say that they're going to start going after these people, and they start, putting fear into like families' hearts and all of these people. When we have a mission, and I know you hear it coming out in the news now. I mean, granted, the transition team isn't in. We haven't had communication with the new administration. I'm looking forward to that, especially to speak with Mr. Holman, who I've worked for before. He's an outstanding leader, and I know the men and women of ICE are looking forward to his tutelage and taking over the reins for us again. But you hear what they're saying. We're going to focus on the worst of the worst. And that's what we're going to do. People say, well, what's going to change? Here in New York City, nothing's going to change. We're still going out looking for these people. Granted, not that I want to speculate what the new administration is going to do, but what I do anticipate is that they will fight for budget and funding from Congress because our budget has been cut. Our bed space has been cut, and the funding for the field offices has been cut. My staff, I've been down 30% of my office's staff the last 3-4 years with this administration because they cut our funding. I do anticipate that to be fought for, to increase, so we get additional resources to continue the great work that we're doing out in the field.
You know, recently, in an interview, you said that it would take a lifetime to clean up the illegal immigration in New York City.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure.
Please?
Basically, and I said that to show people how the sanctuary policies are dangerous. And when I said it will take a lifetime, and I gave you the stats basically of what we arrest last fiscal year and what's getting released back into the community. And especially now you have bail reform. Half of them don't even go to Rikers anymore. They're just cut loose right away. So if we're out executing our arrests, the men and women of ERO New York are executing our arrests, and the same amount is getting released a year by NYPD or Department of Corrections because they can't cooperate with us, obviously you see how tough it is going to try and get all these individuals. Because when they're released back into the city, I talk about addresses and viability of finding these individuals and being transient, as opposed to taking them in a secure setting and bring them into our custody. Those would be in proceedings, detained in ICE custody, and not be out in the community, where now my staff has to go and reinvestigate to try and find them. Number one, it's a public safety issue for the public because we're out in the communities now trying to find these dangerous individuals. And number two, it's a public safety issue for my staff. Right. Because obviously, if you're going into residences, they have the upper hand if you're dealing with that, or anywhere on the street, because, they might have, weapons. A lot of them have weapons now. And a lot of them are, the mentality is they're not going to be arrested. The lack of respect for law enforcement and ICE has grown. Right. So it's no longer, when I say I was back on the streets, when you guys are back on the streets, it's totally different now.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating for local law enforcement too.
Absolutely.
Like say NYPD, they make the collars and arrest, and they're illegal aliens and they can't just pass them off to you.
Exactly. You know they
back
want
into the
them.
street. Of course
because
they do.
you know
Of
they
course
want them
do,
because
yeah.
they're keeping the community safe.
Right. Of course.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense. You hear all these people saying, oh, we're not going to cooperate. But
Who you hurting?
who are you? You're just hurting
Yeah,
your own
exactly.
constituents and your communities.
Exactly.
And like I said, you don't have to change all your sanctuary policies. If you don't want to turn certain people over, fine, but at least turn these heinous individuals over to us so we can take them out of the community. They lost the privilege of being in the communities once they've been arrested and charged with all these crimes.
True. But
Let me present you with an interesting scenario. Several mayors and governors said that if ICE goes to work in their communities, they're going to use the police to block them. Now, the police are sworn to uphold the laws of the United States as well as their local community. So they're putting the police in a very difficult situation. If you're sworn to uphold the law, including U.S. law, I think the police have a very definite basis for disobeying the law. Because if you're allowed to disobey an illegal law, that's basic in police work. Unlawful orders can be disobeyed. And that goes back to the Nuremberg days in Nazi Germany, where people were saying, oh, I was only following orders. So what do you think of that?
I mean, look, the states and the cities, you hear some of the jargon. A lot of it's being brought back now. A lot of them are taking it back from what they originally stated. Look, we're a federal law enforcement agency, and we're going to continue to do the work, whether the cities have sanctuary policies and don't want to cooperate with us right now. We do it right now here in New York City every day. So, I mean, I think that's a political ploy, what they're saying. You can't impede federal law enforcement from doing its job. And I don't think that law enforcement officers are going to be told to harbor people that are illegally present in the United States, because, I mean, you've heard Mr. Holman on TV state that that's in violation of, federal law. So I just think it's verbiage that's being utilized right now. It's unnecessary, but we're going to continue to do the work that we do as sworn federal law enforcement officers.
Can you envision a confrontation between your people and the police?
No, I don't. I mean, look, I don't envision that. I really don't. And I don't even want to even think of the situation where that would occur. I mean, because number one, like I said, we all do the same work.
yeah, I don't think it ever will.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And number two, I'm pretty sure cooler heads will avail in any situation.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about this before. The last time we spoke to you about deputizing the police in certain areas to assist you. Has that been discussed?
Well, like I said, I can't speculate what the new administration is going to do. I mean, there is we have a program called the 287G program that basically deputizes individuals, but officers that are located at the jails, and they act as a force multiplier for ERO when they're doing screenings on the intakes. But if you're not cooperating with us and it's a sanctuary city, obviously you're not going to want to have your jail enforcement officers deputized or, cross-designated as an immigration official at that time. So, but there are ways. We've had the 287G program in effect, and it's proven to be effective. I mean, unfortunately, in this administration, it's been put on hold. But there are avenues, but I can't speculate what the new administration is going to do. So, we'll see.
I think it could only get better under President-elect Donald Trump and Tom Homan right under him. I think it's going to get a lot better. It has to. It can't get any worse.
I mean, look, like I said, I've worked for Mr. Homan before, and I've worked under President Trump before, and we need the leadership that's going to let us at least, like I said, we definitely need funding, and it's not just New York. It's all of the agencies. It's all of the field offices across the country. But we also need funding for detention space. You can make all these arrests if you have nowhere to put them. That's a problem. So a lot of that was cut during the current administration, and we're hoping that Mr. Holman can persuade Congress to obviously get the budget going for
I think it will.
detention space and for the ability to staff the field officers at a full level with their officers going forward. But we know basically what to expect. We've all worked for the prior administration, but the majority of us, we have a lot of new staff on board. And all of the men and women are eager, to continue working the job, knowing that, it will be backed up by Mr. Holman.
Yeah, I agree, Ken.
If an illegal has a final, I don't know what you call it, final eviction order or whatever it is, where they've been through the system.
Final order of removal.
Right. Is there any other process required after that, or you can just take them and throw them out?
Yeah, once they have a final order removal, we basically they've had their time in front of the immigration judge. They've gone through this system. We can once they're arrested at that time, we can set them up for removal from the United States. But look, the notion of us picking someone up, grabbing them, and taking them to JFK and putting them on a plane, that doesn't happen. Granted, if they do have a final order removal, it would be faster to remove the individual, as opposed to if they have a pre-order, which means they're still going through proceedings. But even with the final order removal, depending on if they had their appeals before, they could still try and file appeals. But usually once we have that final order removal, we're pretty much good to remove them from the United States.
So how long, Ken, does the average process take?
Well, it depends. It's a case-by-case basis. Individuals could go, if they're in a detained setting, obviously it's a faster process. Right. They could see an immigration judge within, couple of months, and the judge could order them removed. They can appeal the case, which goes to the Board of Immigration Appeals. There's so many cases on appeal right now that's been taking a while. I've seen some cases that can last up to a year on appeal. Oh. And then if they're ordered removed by the Board of Immigration Appeals, then they could file with the Second Circuit Court of New York. So obviously you see there's many avenues for an individual to appeal the case. So depending on when the final order is, if they've gone through all those appeals or, they're ready to go. Yes, once they have that final order, they're ready to go. And once we arrest them, it should be a quick turnaround to remove them from the United States.
I could see a cottage industry for immigration lawyers. They're going to have a lot of work.
I mean, we do have our Office of Principal Legal Advisor. They're the ones that basically assist us and help us out with all of our cases, and they give us legal sufficiency, and my staff works with them constantly. Like I said, when we go out in the field, we know exactly who we're going after. The officer, they get a lead, they work up the case, they take it to our legal department, and they look it over, they give it legal sufficiency, sign off, and it goes back to the office's supervisor, and the supervisor even looks at it. So it almost goes through a triple check. So when we're out in the field, it's gone through a good background, and we know exactly who we're looking for. So when you hear these things and these narratives about us, doing the sweeps, and it's just fear mongering at that point.
So when you hit, say, Nassau County, you notify like their precinct that you're in the area doing some work?
Usually if we're out in the field, we usually like to give them a heads up that we're doing work, no matter what part of the AOR we're in. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously you want to try and stay away from any blue on blue scenarios, right, and just give them a heads up, because, even sometimes you'll be sitting out there and you're waiting for the individual to come because you figure out you might not be able to get into the house, or you might be too dangerous to get into the house. You're waiting on the individual to come out, and you'll see the neighbors notice the car and they'll call, they'll call the PD on you. So at least they know in the area, they'll be like, okay, that's, ICE is in the area at that time. But most of the times we usually notify the locals that we're going to be doing, serving some warrants in the area.
Okay. Do you take one of the radios, or you're on the same frequency at any time?
No, usually we don't, unless we're doing some type of joint operation together. But unfortunately, with the sanctuary policies, it's far few between.
Wink, wink.
Yes, exactly.
How is deportation, the physical part, actually carried out? Do you take a group of them and put them on a plane? Is it a government plane? Is it a private plane? Are they all chained together like a chain gang?
So there's different avenues, and I'll explain it to you. It's actually pretty unique, because we are the only law enforcement agency in the country that catches them, cleans them, and removes them. We're with them the whole process. Unlike, a police officer make the arrest, he might be needed in trial, but other than that, it goes to the DAs and they prosecute the case. Us, we make the arrest. If we're detaining them, We have officers that work on the case with our legal department. And then once they're ordered removed, depending on their background. So if they're have very bad, heinous criminal background, violent, sex offenders, at that point, we have to ensure that we are doing an escort, and we do it several ways. One of them is we have a ICE Air. It's just like Con Air. So we'll fly individuals from our interior offices and stage them in an office. A lot of times it's out of Louisiana or the southwest border. And we take the individuals from the same countries, and then we fly them on ICE Air with our staff to those countries. Or in the case of Mexico, we'll walk them across the southwest border, usually there. But if they're not from some of the countries in Central America, South America, or the Caribbean, we have to fly them commercially. So depending on their background, if they do have violent tendencies or heinous crimes, we have to send officers with them. So we usually do 2 to 1 on a commercial flight, and our officers will fly them back to their country of origin.
Oh, interesting.
Go to wine.
Ken, before you go, I'd like to talk about your second career, your hockey career. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm just recovering from a broken foot last May, and I missed the 3/4 of the season, and I was able to get back into it this season. And lo and behold, the quarter into the season, I got hit on the same foot on the other side, and now I have a stress fracture that's finally healing. I've finally added a boot right now, but looking to get back on the ice.
So you missed the playoffs then.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you heal well and you continue the great work you're doing. And hopefully you'll see you in the newspaper again.
Yeah, I appreciate being on. Look, I'm looking forward to hopefully working with NYPD and NYC DOC. I mean, it's inevitable. We need to be working together.
I'm sure they are as well.
Absolutely.
Believe me.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you very much for having me on.
thank you, Ken Genalo, Director of New York Office for ICE. Once again, thank you. And hopefully we'll have you on in the near future as well.
Absolutely.
And there'll be some even more better news.
Absolutely. I would love to come back.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Cop Talk. You can also follow us on X at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, and God bless law enforcement throughout the world.
And as usual, you forgot to mention YouTube.
Captain, that's why you're the captain. I'm only a detective. Thanks, Cap. Until next time, be safe. Thank you.